Well, it's been about a month since I last did a video. Been a bit slack, but to be fair, I haven't really done a great deal of interest or really that much, which I thought was going to be difficult and that anyone else wouldn't be able to just figure it out exactly like I have. But nonetheless, give an update. So obviously the last video, or the last main thing that I did that was documented, was the window. I've been having a bit of issues with that. Basically, I think what you really need to do, I sort of cheaped out. I didn't buy a electric like mastic gun. Having one of them is really useful, especially with the mastic that the windows come with, very thick. It just means that you can keep the bead nice and even, so the space, the thickness is going to be fine. And I think what had happened is I hadn't kept it perfectly even, which meant that at some point it went from thick to thin to thick again. At that thinnest point, it meant that the window wasn't touching the van skin. Basically meant the walk could come in. So a lot of googling around. Most people say to take the window back off again. I was humming and hawing. Basically what I've done is I've just put a seal of mastic along the top, and that is sealed it perfectly fine. But in the back of my head I always am thinking, if that mastic goes, then I know that water's going to get in. But there's nothing stopping me from taking the window off after everything's done anyway, because I think that around that window is just going to be carpet. But so buy an electric thing probably, or rent one, borrow one, whatever. Just means that you're definitely sure that you've got that same thickness all the way across. Anyway, cool. So did that. The next thing I suppose is probably the roof light. Fitted the roof light. Again, didn't bother videoing it because it's not really that too dissimilar to basically what I've done for the side window really. Measured it on the inside, sort of where I wanted it. Drilled some pilot holes through from the inside of the van, went up to the roof, jigsawed it out, and then had a bit of a pain in the ass because this is a crafter. It's ribbed. You can see the ribs on the inside. Means that the top of the van isn't flat. So to make sure you've got a decent seal, I had to use basically a shit ton of mastic tape basically, and all that is just like a thin reel of mastic that you can put on to use it to flatten out the top of the van. So if you've got your ribs, you need to put something in between the ribs to make sure that the roof light sits flush. That took a while, but other than that, that's perfectly watertight. Shit ton of mastic around that and it's fine. So don't really have any tips for that. Just, yeah, maybe don't buy a ribbed van, makes it a lot easier. But yeah, happy with that. I've got two more to fit at the front, but I don't quite know where they're going yet, so we'll leave that. But another thing you might have noticed is the fact that it's very silvery in here. So I have been stuffing insulation, which is the itchiest shit in the world, but this stuff is the recycled bottle tops, so it's not the fiberglass stuff, so it's not going to kill you. But yes, carbon zero loft insulation. Basically just pull it apart and stuff it in places. So for obviously these sort of things, stuffing it in every single gap you can get into, and then just layering it in, and in the sides of the vans where all the panels were, exactly the same thing. Stuff it in on the top where the extra windows could go, just put a big chunk of it, and then Reflectex over the top to sort of one, hold it in, but two, to give you a vapor barrier, so that any moisture from the outside of the van that sort of like condensates on the inside can't then come through to your woodwork or the inside of your van. So that's what that is. Reflectex over the top, and then that sort of foil tape that you can buy just to seal it all off. Yeah, not much to say. I've been filling the sort of the other gaps with expanding foam, which is kind of against my slight eco-warrioriness, because it's not the most eco-friendly thing in the world, but it does a really good job of sealing bits that are really awkward to get into. Yeah, again, don't really have any tips for that. Shove it, do the best you can. So the plan is to use Kingspan or Celotex or whatever brand of hard insulation board you can find to do the roof in between these gaps and to do the floor. But I need to work out where the floor joists are going for the structure of the van, so I can bolt like the bits of kitchen and various cupboards and stuff to the floor, because the floor is going to be screwed to the chassis, so that will give me the van some structure to it. The ceiling I could do sort of now, but I don't have any money. But also I need to cut the front two roof lights out. There's one going in the shower room with a vent, and then one going above the kitchen with a vent, so I need to do them, and then I'll be sort of running the electrics for the lights. So I haven't quite worked out yet. I've got a rough diagram of sort of like the schematics of how I want the electrics to be. Yeah, that sort of details about the 12 volt and the 24 volt and all the way all the switches and fuses are going to go, but I need to run those, at least the wiring for them, so that I can poke that through the insulation, and then I could do the roof, which might be the next thing I do, because this van is probably going to be used for me and Megan to move house. We're doing that at the same time, so yeah, don't really want to do too much because I don't want to fuck up the inside of the van. But well, actually no, one thing, yeah, so when you're doing the sides, you could do it afterwards like I have, but obviously for the cladding or however your plywood or whatever you're doing to the sides, you're going to have some sort of frame to attach that cladding to. So for that to be as strong as possible, and you're more than likely going to attach cupboards and stuff to that frame afterwards, you want to attach it to the sides of the wall, or to the sides of the chassis of the van even. So if you, like I have, reflex text the whole thing and then suddenly realise that you don't actually know where the chassis members are, it's useful if you mark up that beforehand, otherwise you have to go around poking everywhere or looking at previous pictures to find out, oh yeah, that's where the chassis are. So yeah, tip there I suppose. But another tip is definitely find yourself some cardboard. One, not only is it very good for drawing and doing maths on, it's really useful for marking out where stuff's going to be, so you can get your spatial awareness. I have drawn this up on Google SketchUp. Again, I can put that overlaying now, sort of showing like how I wanted the van to be roughly, and some rough sizes based on the long wheelbase, but until you actually get in it, you don't know the spacings of stuff. So this is the most bodgiest thing ever, but basically just a load of old cardboard that I managed to scavenge, but it's fallen apart a bit. But if that wall is there, what is it going to hold? Sort of. This is the shower room, so I can work out that this way it's going to be a bit tight if I'm showering. But if I'm lengthways, because the van is obviously a long wheelbase, I've got the length to do it, the shower room is more than adequate, and you could still stand sideways and have the loo. It was originally a lot smaller. You can see this second line, and that line is where it was going to be, but being in it, I don't think that's going to be feasible to have the space, so I've expanded it slightly, which therefore has meant that I've taken the kitchen from where it was further back. So the kitchen counter is a bit smaller, but I don't really see that being too much of a problem. And also it's meant that it's kept the space between the kitchen and the shower room, so I can be cooking, or Megan could be cooking, and there is enough room, surprisingly, for someone to come around the back. And it's just generally allowed me to sort of work it out, and from knowing that those dimensions work, I can bring that backwards along the van. So cupboard sort of in this gap here, a chair or a seat, even another seat here, and then obviously the back's going to be the bed and the garage. So I already had an idea how I was going to do this space wise and dimensions, but it's definitely worth mocking it up. Yeah, that was a really long video, me saying I hadn't really done that much, but I think these will probably be quite sporadic. Basically when A, I can be bothered, B, I remember, and C, when I think something might be of use, because watching a 15-minute video, even though it is cool and I personally did watch them, of people stuffing insulation in walls isn't really needed. It's a bit of a waste of time. So go watch them, but for now I'm going to carry on, and then maybe I'll show you how I've done something else. Maybe the wiring. It's probably the